Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 66 of the NTS Podcast. As you can probably see from the title, we are joined by I think you could class as one of the UK veterans, Beeley, this week. Beeley, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Very good. Obviously, we have you on then to, as I'm sure most people can imagine, to basically have a talk through, your time in the UK scene, what it's been like, how it's changed, and everything like that. Before we do, obviously, my co-host Tom is here as well, and I figured that congratulations is in order for you, Tom, with Esports Insider's
You
Esports
didn't
Award
tell me
nomination.
this. Oh, you did. You were. I didn't know you were going to mention. No, yeah. Yeah, really happy. Obviously, I'm the sub editor of Esports Insider. It is all a team. I hate it. Why did you do this to me, Lee? I hate. It's like I am the
blush,
person
Tom.
behind the scenes. I'm the person behind the scenes. It's all my wonderful freelancers and me who occasionally has to write like a couple of pieces and everybody else. But yeah, 2 years in a row, so that's quite good.
Very nice.
Hopefully, we'll win it. We'll try. We'll try and win it.
Yeah, I'll throw a vote your way, Tom. Don't worry. You've got at least one. Yeah, kind of jumping into the episode then. Like I said, obviously, Beeley, we wanted to have a chat about your time in esports, your time in the UK scene, and when I was just even having a flick through, looking at the different teams and things you've been on, am I right in thinking that your first team was it one of the Insomnias, and you had Frumi as your jungler, and somehow that didn't put you off, and you kept playing?
Yeah, so my first team was Enclave, and we qualified for UK Prem, I think it was called back then, by like some massive upset. It was kind of crazy. And then yeah, we went to Insomnia after that split finished, and Frumi was my jungler for that period of time. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And you made it through. And you went, well, I
That
guess
was
you
like must have been the biggest test, surely.
I vividly remember a game where he got like 3 buffed playing Ivan, and obviously like Ivan like instantly takes camp, so I don't know how that happens, but yeah, it was a fun time.
Well, from that you went from Frumi to Skude, so it's like not a bad upgrade, I suppose. And yeah, we'll talk a bit more maybe about Skude later as well, and a few different junglers that you've been with. But I just wanted to talk just in general about that kind of Insomnia era, like before it was just like Forge of Champions and UKLC and stuff. Because I think me and Tom probably got into the UK scene like just after it. I feel like I always see people mention Insomnia, and then but like since I've been involved in the scene, there's never been one really, I think. So yeah, what was it like when it was more like LANs compared to now, where it's just pretty much all online?
I think there's like a loss of touch of personability. Like the Insomnias, the best thing about them isn't necessarily going to compete. It's going to meet everybody that you've been competing against throughout the split, and like everybody that you've heard about and you've seen from lower leagues, and even in some cases from like different leagues. So getting to meet everybody and spending time with them was always my favorite part about it. Playing at the LAN was like sort of came second. It depended on the team I was playing with. Some people wanted to go to win, and in those cases it was bed by 10 p.m. and stuff like that. But my favorite part about it was always meeting everybody in that real life environment.
I think it's weird, like just talking about like Insomnia and stuff like that. There wasn't at that time in the UK esports scene. It was very much. It was just a casual thing. It was competitive casual, where it was very much. You were there to chill, but then there was just a tournament, and it was kind of an excuse really to kind of go to these events and stuff. Where now it's funny how to see like the UK scene have kind of grown so much in like not that many years compared to you see it in like the Danish scene and stuff like that, where they've been doing kind of things which we do now. They've been doing it for like 10 years or so. So it's really interesting to kind of see how there was that quick jump, but I think it was good. I think I really enjoy like the kind of casual part of it, and we still do have it a little bit with like Epic LAN, when they do all their events and stuff. So it's nice to know that that's always been like, I felt like quite a UK thing, is this kind of casual competitive LAN event kind of system.
Mm-hmm. Then one thing obviously back then, being as it was so like casual, I suppose you wouldn't get, maybe it's like a bit of a nasty term, but like you didn't get orgs like taking advantage of people and things, would you, back then? Because the way I pictured it first of all was like you think of like the old days of League to begin with. It was like the Wild West, and you just had like maybe dodgy people running orgs and stuff. But I suppose was it at a point where it's like even before like too early for that kind of thing to even happen? There wasn't really the money involved, so there wasn't really much to gain from like sort of exploiting the players or anything like that. Was there any like kind of dramas still with that kind of thing?
There was definitely some dramas because I was so new to the scene and I didn't even, I didn't have social media. I didn't follow people that are in the scene. Like I was like, I didn't even know it existed until about 3 months prior to joining Enclave, basically. So I'm not too versed on the dramas going on around that period, but I definitely have heard stories back then. I think your point does stand though. Like it was very grassroots. I don't think many teams were being salaried. So there was, salary is one of the big things that happens, and a lot of like the shady stuff that does happen around salary. I'm sure for the teams that were getting paid, there might have been a few things. I think there's actually something to do with NerdRage back then, but I don't know enough about it to actually speak on it without getting something wrong. But from what I've heard, but there's definitely been some stories dating back to even back then when it was like so fresh and so new for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because at that point, and with like base esports in general at that level, it was you would either come together as like just a group of friends and go and compete, or if there was a team behind it, it would be right. We can give you like some sort of accommodation, and it'll be we get a percentage of the winnings. It won't be like here's a salary. It'll be like if you win this 10,000, well, your £5,000 tournament, we get 1,000 of that, and then you guys get an extra, and in return you get kind of accommodation and stuff like that, which goes through that. So that's and it's really hard to kind of essentially screw over a player when they're kind of so entwined with actually the results which are going out at that point as well. So it was like very different how the structure was back then as well.
Yeah, and around that time then, like you said as well about the UK Premiership, like the ESL run, I think at that time. What was it like just competing in those in general as well? Because obviously that was eventually taken over by LVP, and we had the UKLC and everything like that. But yeah, what was it like with there? Because I think a lot of the players competing back then is sort of still around like UKLC as well. So how was it then compared to like UKLC now?
A lot of the players are still around. They're still playing. I think once you get into this, once you experience like the competitive scene, it's enjoyable. It's like really, really enjoyable. So you don't want to give up. You want to keep going at it. But the difference, I think the skill, obviously, as the game progresses, is crazy different. I think you take any team from like UKLC or UKEL today and put them back then, they'll probably do really well. But also from my experience anyway, that like the dedication that even the lower teams have. Like I see even teams that are like struggling, you'd think their morale is low. They're still scrimming a whole bunch. Like their players are reaching out, trying to get like practice and advice and stuff like that. So at least from my experience back then, that was something that I didn't at that period in time didn't even really think about. It was like, oh look, I'm on this team, we practice this many times a week, and then I sort of do my own thing, and then we play this game, and that was like it. So I think that level of professionalism has gone up from the players, and I guess management as well, the orgs as well, stepping up. Everything is just sort of leveled up.
Mm-hmm. And does that change like the enjoyment of it at all? Because obviously, like we were saying before, it was like very like casual, and now it is much more professional, and everyone's kind of like more like try-harding kind of thing. Is that at least for you? Do you prefer it that way, or is it something just kind of obviously it's changed, isn't it?
I think I do prefer it this way. I think the result of that is like there's higher highs, but there's lower lows as well. Once you put in so much more effort, and if you lose, it takes strong characters to instantly bounce back from that. I think when you're in the call, you've just lost a game that you should have probably won or you're expected to win, and it's just a bit silent. You can start to feel how much it affects everybody. But then equally, not necessarily the wins, but like seeing yourself improve after putting in all that effort is like much more satisfying than maybe winning a couple of games back then. But with that being said, actually, I never had much success back then because I was on one of the lower teams anyway. So maybe it's different for people that were taking it all. But definitely on the lower half of the table, I can speak for. If you won a game, it was like, yay, we won. I'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like even like me and my friends play like tier 4 clash where there's like literally no stakes, and if we just lose all 3 games, the call afterwards, everyone's just like total silence. Like, well, what do we do now? So I can imagine if you like actually practicing for a whole week for a game that actually matters, then I'm sure it's a lot worse than what we have. Kind of looking into some of the specific teams then, we're kind of going into sort of the more recent couple of years. When the UKLC was formed, I think you were in the first split, I'm pretty sure, with Darkspawn. One thing that I wondered about that in particular, because this is like kind of going back a bit, but I remember watching XL did like a scouting grounds tournament, with just like a bunch of UK players basically. And one of them that I remember thinking looked pretty good was PFI, who was there as a jungler. And you've obviously, I think, played with him a few times since. And this, I'm pretty sure, was the first team you were on with him. I just wondered what he's like as a player, and what your thoughts on him are, because he feels like someone that kind of comes and goes as well. He'll have like a split without a team, and then he'll suddenly come back. And I'm always sort of surprised when I don't see him on a team, because I always, at least myself, pictured him as one of the stronger junglers in the scene. So yeah, what are your thoughts on PFI in particular?
Yeah, I think he's definitely one of the stronger junglers in the scene. I think any team he's on could easily be, top 2. He's developed a lot in terms of his voice. When we started, he was more of he was young, he was new, so he was a follower. And in a jungle role, it's not something you always look for. He always had a good idea about the game, but didn't speak up much back then. This is like years ago. He's a player that's never afraid to be aggressive. I mean, if you watched us last split, we got to a point where we were like, okay, guys, we need to start making things happen. And then if you watch a game, like you can see the change, because like every game after we had that talk, PFI was flashing on somebody level 3 and just starting the game, start snowballing the game right from then. And in terms of development, he's much more vocal now in terms of what he wants to do. He's not afraid to take charge of the situation, and if he feels things slipping away, then you can rely on him to get that, to see that opportunity to bring it back for you, basically.
And with PFI in particular as well, I mentioned earlier that it seems like him and Skude are like the 2 junglers you've kind of like gone backwards and forwards. It looks like almost every split you just swap between which one. What is it about them 2 in particular that's meant that you've kind of ended up on a number of teams? Do you think it's just somewhat random, or is it just people you get on with like personally as well?
I think with Skude, it's very it was a bit random. Like I joined the first time we signed him, he was new, and can't have any impact on that. But he's like a really nice guy. Love playing with him. Super talented as well. And then the second time, I think it was actually back on Enclave as well. So both times were on Enclave, and it was by coincidence essentially they signed him. That split on Enclave. I wasn't even supposed to be a starting player. I was supposed to be the sub, and then because of the rules of the league, they couldn't even put me as a sub. They just signed and I was already on their team, so they put me as a content creator. But then something happened. I had to play full time, so that's how we started. But with PFI, the first team we actually played on was Phelan before Darkspawn, and that was in some qualifying tournaments. And we got on super well. We've been really close friends since then, basically. So when we had the opportunity with Darkspawn, we took it together, and then for a couple of splits, we've actually looked together. If we've had individual trials and offers, and we've had individual discussions with teams, but we have always said, if you get us 2 together, it's going to be like a different experience, and we do look for that. So definitely gone out of my way a bit more to have more game time with PFI as opposed to Skude.
Fair enough. Kind of going into sort of moving on from that Darkspawn era then. One I wanted to talk about in particular was the summer UKLC split last year, which was the one where it was like a million teams could basically get into playoffs in the last game, or basically like every team more apart from like maybe one or two. Just what was that like actually playing it? Because yeah, I thought it must have just been like pretty hectic, right? Because you were trying to follow all the games and work out what the implications are of what's going on, and have we made it, have we not? So yeah, what was it like just being in the league that was that close? It's pretty bizarre to have it so close for like the whole table, right?
It was really, really exciting. We had internal issues for the start of that split, and we were really struggling as a team to come together and sort of get wins consistently. And we had like this spreadsheet when it got to that point, and we had some people on, like our analysts on that were very I think it was the manager was very like on the scenarios, like he loves spreadsheets, so we had a spreadsheet that showed everything. And we actually got to a point in the split where we were like, it might not have been healthy, but before the games, the analysts would be like, okay, guys, if we lose this game, then we have to win this game and this game and this game and this game. We can only afford to drop these games. Like, we were given these scenarios, and then it got to a point where it was actually like, okay, well, guys, now we would need to win every game to even have a shot of getting to playoffs. And we did it. So we couldn't afford to drop a single game, and we didn't. And that was like super satisfying, especially right up until the last day, you know, getting that last win on the board, knowing that you've secured yourself. And I think like the top 6 teams all had the same score, or well, within one game of each other. It was nice to watch the chaos unfold on Twitter as people tried to figure out what was going on.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, because I remember I was looking back, and it was literally the last 2 weeks you guys went like 4-0 or something, and just jumped up, through the table. What I wanted to ask as well, just looking on that team in particular, on that roster, just another player that I've seen you play with, I think a couple of times now, is Rifty as a top laner, because this is someone that I don't think I've really ever sort of watched with. I don't know, just not watched too much, but then whenever I hear Rifty mentioned, I always hear people sort of talk of him as one of the best UK top laners and someone that could like make the step up to a higher level at some point. But yeah, I don't know, it seems like kind of random. Like I hear his name mentioned every now and then, but then whenever I do, it's just like nothing but praise. So is he someone that's maybe underrated that potentially could make like the NLC step up, do you think? Or yeah, what's it like being on a team with Rifty?
So just to touch back on the Demise thing, we went from 3-5 in week 4, and we finished the split 9-5. So we actually won 6 games in a row.
Blimey.
But with Rifty, yeah, you ask anybody in the UK scene about Rifty, they'll tell you he's one of the best top laners the UK has. Super talented, knows like almost every matchup really well, reliable carry, plays all different types of styles, and a great voice on the team as well. You know he's super dedicated to the win. You can feel the passion, in game, out of game, everything like that. So playing with him in game is, it was a really valuable experience for me to get to watch this player, how he works, how he interacts with the team. Learned a lot from him. Yeah, being on the team with him is great. I would recommend it if you can sign him. You know, well, Demise didn't do too good last split with him there, but that doesn't take away anything from his ability as a player. He's a really talented guy.
And I would definitely say that people should take Beeley's opinions with players, because I was going through my old Gromp News interviews when I was doing UKLC interviews, and I asked Beeley a few questions when they were playing. He was with Enclave in 2019, which is quite mental that that's 2 years ago now. And he was facing Diabolus, and I asked him who's the player which they should be looking out for the most, and he said the mid laner for Diabolus, who was at that point a guy called I can never say his name. Why is it the person I can? Right, the person at Singularity. It's the person at Team Singularity now. So clearly, 2 years on from then, Faroy now been very good for Team Singularity. I feel like this split. So everybody just keep notes of these players, which Beeley's saying now, because in 2 years' time, you never know.
Well, We'll see. Um,
You did also say that he didn't do much in the last game against you, but I left that part out. You said he was the best, but against me he didn't do anything.
He's talented for sure. Yeah, maybe I'm a confidence player. Maybe I was trying to hype myself up for the next game.
Cool. Going on from that Demise team then. Obviously, the split after that was the previous split that had just gone, the spring split with London. Obviously, your first split there. Now this was a split of your guys' team on paper looked obviously really good and really strong for the UK scene, especially with I think I said it when we had Mulgrew on fairly recently, and I said once I saw like Dem Voxney in the UKLC, I was just thinking like, what the hell is he doing there? This roster's ridiculous. I suppose the unfortunate thing was that you had that Resolve roster in the same league as well, which was for the most part they were just like purely dominant and won every game, and then obviously you had that mad final where to that point they hadn't lost a game, and then you took them to the full 5 matches. So what was it like just being in that final? Did you kind of go in thinking that you could upset them, and then, or was it just you try your best, and then once you realise you could actually, you nicked a game, then it's like, okay, maybe we could actually win it?
I think everybody on London, or the players especially, knew that we could take a game off of them. We were very, very hyped for the final, especially after the first game. We went into it with the mentality of like, they're not as good as everybody thinks they are. They've shown weakness. They're obviously really, really good. But they have shown.
They had some really shaky games as well, though, in their like unbeaten run, I suppose, as well.
Exactly, yeah. And I think we, as players, we were able to match ourselves up to our opponents and say, actually, we're all of a similar skill level here. That the only thing that's different is the team cohesion they had from the get-go. They were very on the same page, and I think that was what propelled them forward. And then once they got that snowball going, it was really hard to knock them off of their sort of throne in the UKLC. But after the first game, our mentality switched a whole bunch. We went from, wanting to win a game really badly to wanting, or like to knowing we can beat these guys. And I think honestly in the final we probably had like a massive mental edge on them in terms of how we were playing, how we were thinking about the game and stuff like that. So yeah, it was super hype. That's my favorite split so far by far.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, because it did kind of bring back memories of like the XL Fnatic final where XL were unbeaten, I think in like 2020 spring, I think.
So they were unbeaten in the entire entire
unbeaten until the final, and then once Fnatic got a game off them, it just kind of crumbled. So it kind of felt like that, like they hadn't, at that point, that 5-man roster hadn't lost a game, and it kind of looked like if they got a loss, it could be like pretty disastrous. So it was very entertaining to watch, at least. Then obviously coming second place still got you into Telia Masters though, and I feel like you guys was I guess an unlucky group when you look at the fact that I'm pretty sure the 2 teams that got through from your group were like the 2 final teams, right? So it's like we kind of asked this similarly to Mulgrew when he had him on when we had him on, and it's kind of like you can obviously, it still was in your hands. You could have maybe played better and gotten through, but seeing that those 2 teams go through to the finals, that kind of put you at ease a bit to think that maybe it wasn't too much of an upset that you guys didn't make it through?
I think we definitely outperformed expectations, but I don't think we outperformed our own expectations, because from an outsider's perspective, you see in like, oh, London are in this group of all these hard teams, they're doing pretty well, they're taking games off of them, but our level of play didn't step up from the UKLC final to what we was playing then, or not a whole bunch anyway. And there were times when some of the games we lost, for example, we were in very, very comfortable driving seats and we just made really small errors. And that's the problem when you play these teams that are better than you, just straight up better than you. Mistakes that you make, doesn't matter how small, if they recognize that it's a mistake and they punish it, then the game swings. So you get away with a lot more playing lower teams, and it's really hard to even spot habits that are bad, or that can be punished to the extent that they are punished. So it was tough. It was tough. I think that the toughest thing about it for the team was that the way we finished third on like the 4th tiebreaker rule or something stupid like that. We had the same score as them, and then they go to like to head-to-heads, and we had the same head-to-heads, and then they go to overall wins and losses, and we had the same like number of wins more than losses, so it went down to like head-to-head wins to losses or something like that, and it was just like, can we just play like a tiebreaker, please? Like, it's one game, just let us try and let us duke out instead of going down to all these weird rules. But
Yeah, because I think as well that was it because obviously you look at the standings now and you were one off, but I think it was because it was already decided like before the 5th game. I think it wasn't
Yeah.
it? 'Cause it was like because there was that massive thing where people were like, "Are London out?" Because people were saying that they weren't, and people say that they were, and I think there was a tweet and it basically went through like everything that occurred to make it now impossible for London to have actually gone in. So yeah, it was incredibly unlucky. But I do want to actually say, like, how was it doing like the best of 3? Yeah, obviously you only got to play like 5 like teams, and it would have been nice to have done like a double round robin. But actually playing like a best of 3, how was it kind of the experience of being able to do that?
I think we were very comfortable in a best of 3 scenario because, not only does it replicate what scrims are, essentially, you play 3 games, sometimes a best of 3, but we were a team that was very adaptable to the situation. Like one of the things we would say through the split was that we're like some anime team like Goku. You beat us down. If you win super hard against us game 1, then game 2 is going to be really hard for you because you've like shown your hand. So when we got into that best of 3 scenario, it was almost as if we lost the first game, the enemy team should start to get worried because like we're able to think on the fly so much quicker. So I really enjoyed the best of 3.
Do you wish that more leagues would do it? I know it's obviously like logistically, it's I guess a bit more of a nightmare for like organisers to do. But would you actually prefer that for like a full split? Do you think?
I think I definitely prefer something that shows off a bit more of like team skill rather than because a lot, as much as it is a meme, a lot can be decided in draft and best of ones, and a lot can be decided in the first 5 minutes. And there's nerves and this. I don't think the best of 1 format necessarily shows you what team is the best team. It just shows you what team comes into the game the strongest. Because once you get that foothold in the door, then it's really difficult to lose. I think. I would much prefer, maybe even a best of 2 to make it a bit quicker for everybody. And then even if it goes 1-1, then these teams are about even, and you can do like a point system. Would probably be for the best in terms of competitiveness and overall improvement for the teams and the players. But yeah, like you said, it is a bit difficult logistically to schedule that stuff. So
Yeah, because I think that there's always been, I think, a mentality where it's like the regular season doesn't mean anything apart from making the playoffs, which then is played in a best of 3 and a best of 5 format. So it's like, that's why whenever, people look at even, a team like Fnatic, for example, they finish like 5th in the regular season. Like Fnatic had never been, not all the time, have been like a top like 2, even in regular season. It's just because they know that once they're in, they then will then turn on to actually doing the best of format, which actually then is more of a beneficial and does show technical skill. So it is very much, I think, like I never take you could take like performances, yeah, but I never take it as okay, just because a team has finished like 3rd in the regular season doesn't mean that they will automatically be 3rd in playoffs, because there are different kind of outlooks to going towards that. And that's why we see, like, the main thing I can think of is in the tower format, and it was Phelan, because whenever Phelan made it into knockouts, they actually became like the 3rd and 2nd best team in the entire tournament. It's just they needed to get it into actually knockouts to then perform at that point.
Yeah, that was like the pad special, wasn't it? The gauntlet or
Yeah,
something.
exactly. Yeah.
Obviously, we couldn't have you on then as well, I guess, without talking about the tower format, especially now we're on the topic of best ofs and whatnot. what were your thoughts on it? I suppose as a player, I suppose maybe not the greatest. It usually, when we ask people, they usually don't have the best outlook on it.
Yeah, I think it was a format that was exclusively to benefit viewers, is the way it was marketed. You know, you got these big names, and you got Fnatic and XL in your league. And you're like, whoa, how can we get them to play every single week? Let's do a tower for, like, I don't even know what they were sort of smoking when they came up with that idea. But
It
it must
even
have been
worked
something
though
good.
because Diablos won it.
Yeah,
Plus, as well,
exactly.
like I don't know, if you have those games, it gets to a point where it's like boring to see those games.
Yeah,
I almost
exactly.
preferred it like with like the NLC, where you put them in separate groups, and then when they actually play each other, it makes it actually a much more exciting, because especially when they never play for basically the whole split, and there's no way
Yeah,
of telling which one's stronger until they're basically against each other in the final, instead of
exactly.
like just try and force them against each other every single week, and it's like, oh well, I guess they're playing each other again. I guess yeah, Fnatic might win it this time, or yeah, I guess it
builds
was
so much
lucky
hype.
really that Diabolus were like kind of not overperformed, but were like much better than everyone expected, and ended up winning that.
Well, from a
Definitely made.
schedule standpoint, it was just terrible as well,
Yeah,
because it basically it came out that there was like some teams who never got to face like one of the academy teams just because of the way that the scheduling worked out. Because I think what was meant to happen, it was meant to be, it was going to be Fnatic and BTXL face each other in the final every single week, and then I think if that happened, I think everybody then would have played each other with the way that the scheduling was working. But because teams like M&M and teams like Diablos started like winning games and upsetting like an academy team here and there, it basically like threw the entire schedule, where it's actually like, well, that week a team would have been facing an academy team, then ended up playing M&M or Diablos, and then the academy team went to the other side. And so like it's very much, I feel sorry for the person who had to kind of do all the logistics type of thing.
yeah.
Be
Well,
like, right, this is perfect, and then it just messed up in like the first week.
yeah, I feel like if there's ever any discussion of bringing one back, the perfect advert against the Tau format would be the one. I think it was like right before the final week, where they would try and draw out the bracket on stream, and because they tried to put in some rules so that you couldn't like play against the same teams like 5 times, that it took like 15 minutes to just draw like an 8-team table, because they were drawing teams out, and then they were trying to work it out. Oh, actually, no, they played against each other 3 times. We can't do it, and it just went on and on and on.
Yeah, I think also the format like was really detrimental to the lower teams in the league as well. I think like so for example on Darkspawn, I think it was like eight weeks of games or something like that, and we drew an academy team 50% of the time. So for at least 4 weeks of practice, we got in there. Obviously, it would be a massive upset, probably like 5% chance of us winning. So we didn't get to participate in the league at all for 50% of the league, and we would go, and it felt so bad to put in, a week of practice, work on all this stuff, and then actually you're against Fnatic this week, and it's like, okay, well, back to the drawing board, and then we draw them again, and it's like, okay, well, I want to play League of Legends too, that's why I'm here. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a similar thing happened on Enclave as well. I think on Enclave we had we drew an academy team 3 or 4 times. So my personal experience, not great. Didn't get many wins in either of those splits. I think on Darkspawn we got 1 actually, against a non-academy team, and
I think
yeah,
momentum-wise, it kills it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because, like you said, if you've been training for a week, then just get an academy team, play 1 game, because you could play in that either, I think, between like 4 games or 1 game. So there's no like set amount. So if you'd like just lost it next week, you play an academy team, you've lost it. It's hard to keep motivated to be like, right, okay, let's try and go through, especially if it is like you're going to face an academy team or something like that.
exactly. And the practice you get from like you can play as many scrims as you like, but as soon as you step onto that stage, that practice is probably worth like 4, 5, 6 hours of scrims, because it is a different ballpark. Like if you watched us in scrims, some of the stuff we're going for, we're never ever going to try that on stage if we're not comfortable. And so you do learn, oh, I can do this, this does work. But then you get onto stage and everybody plays safer, and suddenly nobody's making these mistakes because everybody's super focused, and it's like, okay, well, what do we do to win this game that is just a more calm version of what we've been playing? And when you go into a game and you just get absolutely rocked by an academy team 2 weeks in a row, you start to think like, because they expose all of your weaknesses, and you're like, damn, like we're just, where do we start? There's too much. But then if we actually play the lower teams, you can be like, oh, actually, you know, these are our weakest points, because if a lower team can exploit them, then that's where we got the most to improve on. We build on that, and then that's how that's why you see teams throughout the split improve. It's not because they've had more and more and more scrims. Obviously, that's a factor. It's because they've had more and more competitive games where they've been exploited for small things that they've done, and then they work on them in scrims. It's not the other way around, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you would lose a game against like a playoff contender for like London now, for example, and then you would beat maybe a team below that, and you're like, okay, well, how did we beat that team, and how did we lose then to the other team? And you would use both of those games together to kind of find out what your biggest weaknesses would be. Where if you just facing one team losing, you're like, well, you've nothing to compare it to until next week, and anything can change in the space of a week.
For sure. Well, it was I suppose the tower was a fun experiment, but glad it's long gone then, I guess.
Now, Forge of Champions though is I do like
Yeah.
a tower format, but it's like a special kind of attraction thing, but not a regular thing. I do think a tower format can work. It's just more like I like what they do now with the NLC Open. I quite like that idea. I thought that was really
more
good.
just like a cup really than like a one-off thing, rather than making it this weird like weekly cup, which was obviously a bit odd. How did you end up then? I'm just looking at the NLC Full Open, which is obviously the one that we've had so far. So were you coaching with Enclave at that point? I think you guys were in the qualifier for it. How did that come about? Because I don't think you, from what I could tell, you'd coached before. Was that just something you just thought you'd give it a go?
Yeah, it was definitely something I've been interested in. So I do really love the theory side of League of Legends and like dissecting stuff, and I'm pretty good at spotting, sort of mistakes and building on that. And teaching is something that I do have a passion for as well. So coaching just sort of makes sense to me, and I thought I'd give it a try because I had the opportunity. I was approached, and I wasn't playing that much at the time, so I didn't really have that like drive to actually compete in a team. So they approached me, and we spoke, and I had an opportunity to coach there. It didn't really pan out. I think we actually only played a few scrims because there was like commitment problems with the players. They also played for another team in a different league, so they weren't available, and it just fell apart. So I wouldn't even really consider it coaching experience. I'm just a name on that roster sheet at this point because we didn't do much at all.
Something you'd maybe try again then at another point, or would you sort of still focus on playing mainly for now?
I think at the minute I really enjoy competing still. I have the time to do it as well, which was a major factor before. I didn't really have the time or the space to practice play solo queue. I think I've stopped playing League for about 6 months in total before I joined Demise. So up until when I signed for Demise, actually, I signed as a sub, and until about 2 weeks prior to signing, I hadn't played League in about 4 months. Like I played the odd ARAM here and there, but actually just wasn't involved in League of Legends at all. Again, due to my personal life. But once I got back into it and started to enjoy it again, that's when I wanted to compete again instead of being a coach. So for now, definitely more focused on actually playing and winning rather than coaching. But it's something that I'm open to in the future.
Fair enough. Kind of talking about this split then. Obviously, you stuck with London. And I'm pretty sure. Oh yeah, it's just Yeppe Howe, isn't it? The support is the only one that's stayed. So what was the transition like to this split then, especially with the roster? So what did you have any part in the decision making there, being as you were one of the pieces that stayed?
I definitely did have, definitely did get a say on, who we signed, and it was a much more intimate experience in terms of, trials. They knew they wanted to keep me, so when they were doing trials and when I was filling in some of those trials, we had a bit more longer of a discussion about, who looked good, who didn't look good, who we liked playing with and stuff like that. But yeah, so it was much more. I had much more of an impact on the roster decisions of this split than I did any other team. 100%.
And then this one I think is similar to last split really. Once it got announced, was a decent bit of buzz about it as well. And I think, yeah, when we had Mulgrew on recently, he kind of said now that Resolve's gone, the spot is there for London to be the top team basically, which I imagine was
I mean,
the
I
expectation.
don't want to take words out of his mouth, but I think he did say 3. I think. Now,
3.
I don't think it's. I might be wrong with that, and I will definitely check that in the tapes prior. But yeah, how was your perception going in? And actually, given the way that kind of results have gone, is this a lot harder than I think a lot of people expected this league to be? Because I think there was this massive thing where people kind of hyped up Resolve and you guys in London at that point, and then since Resolve kind of left, there was this kind of worry that was the level gonna kind of drop. But it seems that M&M have kind of come in and and took the league quite well. So what was your kind of thoughts going in, and do you think it's actually a lot harder now than well, now you've actually played some games in the league?
I wouldn't say it's harder. I mean, if you if you watch back at the teams I've been on in this league the past couple of splits, you will notice a trend where like the first couple of weeks is a shake up. You'll see a lot of teams come into it with, there's so many new names and then when you put 5 different players together, it's a different team. You don't really know. The meta's changed as well. Like everybody's trying to find their feet at the start. So I wouldn't take results at the start of the split to indicate anything other than, people might not be as strong as you might think they are straight out the gate. Like London, I know there would be higher expectations of us. Me and Yeppe got that experience together. We were a good team last split, so maybe we should have been doing better right out of the gate. But in terms of skill level or like power level of the league, there are definitely some people that look really strong right now. There's some players that look absolutely insane, like Yopper on M&M is a menace. He's, I think everybody's realized now that this guy is a really good player. Same on Resolve. Resolve have some really good players like Otter in the mid lane has been popping off. But with that being said, both of those teams have dropped games. They're not on some crazy different level. And I think the difficult thing about a league like this and about league in general is staying at the top is harder than anything else because everybody below you is learning from you and you have to learn from yourself and improve internally where if M&M smack a team, that team can look and they've got hours and hours of content for them to improve on, for them to get better at. The next time they play M&M, they're not going to make the same mistakes against them as they did before. But M&M have got to learn to play or to exploit even smaller mistakes or force more errors, which is going to be hard for them, right? But with that being said, I think over the next 2-3 weeks, we're going to see some separation. We're already seeing a little bit, but we're going to see a bigger separation in the league, and hopefully that will look like London being at the top. I really don't want to drop another game, so as Yeppe said,
I guess it must be like beneficial as well, considering that while M&M are at the top, you are the team who have beat M&M. So you were that one team. So I'm guessing that kind of does help a little bit, and maybe even seeing like Resolve Academy give Lucent their first win of the split as well. Like those kind of signs. While results for you guys haven't been like as good as what you were wanting right now initially, like seeing kind of results like that must help a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think it just sort of gives us a bit of a mental edge because we are confident in ourselves, and like you said, the top team dropping games to the bottom team, and you just like none of these wins or losses right now matters. The only thing that matters about it is getting a point on the board so that you're closer to playoffs, right? It doesn't actually. Nobody's going into the mentality like, oh, M&M are like really hard. It's going to be a tough game. None of us on the team are thinking about that. We're giving all the teams the respect they deserve, but we're not going to give M&M any more respect than we would Lucendi. Like any team can be a winner. It's about who shows up on the day, basically.
You said a second ago as well you'd see it, you'd expect it to open up a bit more, like the table, I suppose, in the next few weeks. What makes you think that rather than perhaps having like another like crazy close split? Is there like something particular that makes you think that it's not going to be quite as close? Because like you said, it maybe could be tricky to gauge exactly how good everyone is straight away?
I think teams are. So when you go into the split with the new rosters and stuff like that, it's difficult to see. It's difficult to predict, or it's impossible to predict what they're going to be playing, how they're going to be playing, what their weaknesses are and stuff like that. But I think 3 weeks of games into it now, or like two and a bit, because of the weird 4 games in a week or whatever. You're starting to notice some strengths, first of all, that you can shore yourself up about, and then also the weaknesses become super obvious as well. So I think, with that being said, it's gonna sort of good teams right now. You can make an argument that every team is good and every team is bad, but maybe barring a few. But what you won't be able to do is in a few weeks, once we've got we've got 6 games now. Every team has 6 games their enemy has played. If they can't win after having that much information on the enemy, then that's where the separation is between like good players, good coaching, good scouting, and bad players. Well, not bad, but like less experienced, maybe not got the same skill in terms of adaptability outside of the game. I think that's where the separation is going to come. So essentially, the good teams are going to be able to capitalize on what they've seen and improve on what they're weak at. The bad teams are going to stay probably about the same. They're not going to get worse, but they're going to look worse because everybody else is improving.
And I think it's interesting because if you all you need to do is go on to Leaguepedia and basically look at the form kind of table, and I think that kind of really shows that you got M&M who's on 4 wins, so they're obviously the team which have kind of established themselves and kind of got the ball rolling. But everybody else, it's like 2 wins, 1 loss, 2 wins, 1 loss, 1 loss. So it's like it's very much going to be which team can kind of take that momentum and continue with it now, and it is going to be the most consistent team out of like probably the remaining like 3, because I don't think at this point M&M, well, it's going to be hard for M&M to like completely collapse, I think, especially given their form, but it could happen. But like it is very much, who's going to kind of remain consistent for the remaining games, because I believe is it 14 games, I think, this this season, isn't it? Because everybody's playing twice, I think.
Yeah.
So you've got there, you're just about to go halfway, so really you should expect now some teams to hopefully gain a bit of momentum. But personally, as a viewer, I kind of like it like this because but it must be as a player, like you probably don't want another situation where it's like, right, if we lose this game, even though we're second, we could be out of playoffs. I don't think any player would ever want that, even especially if it's like the last couple days or stuff like that.
Yeah, you definitely want to start seeing yourself above the rest of the competition, essentially. But it does add a level to excitement. It adds some stakes to the games. It gets your adrenaline pumping, and especially if you win, you'll see, like you'll just feel it'll feel better, right? If there's higher stakes. But yeah, I wouldn't say M&M are on a 4-game win streak, but they have I've seen teams start stronger and finish worse and stuff like that. So I'm not too intimidated by that. It just they've got a really strong point. They've got the benefit of a really strong point in their team where they can play through, and if they're playing consistently through Yopper like they have been, then they're not going to be forced to adapt until teams start to realize, wait, hold on, if we don't give this guy a lead, what's the rest of the team going to do? Start putting some pressure on the other players that are on that team, and I don't think that's happened yet. Yopper's been, no, I don't. Well, personally, I didn't expect it. I heard that he's a really good player. I think I trialed with him. He was really good, but the performances he's had, he's putting them on his back, right? And that isn't something that you can consistently do. So, yeah, I don't think consistent with you. Yeah, I shouldn't read the chat. Sorry.
Maybe like jumping the gun a little bit, but even looking towards Telia Masters this time around, if you guys are to make it through, how would you rate your guys' chances compared to like some of the other teams we're seeing, like in the other leagues at the moment? Obviously, I suppose Absolved being like the main one that at least on paper looks like one of the stronger teams in the Danish league. So
we had this last split though, and
true. I was just going to say that. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Telia Masters' chances, or is that something you've not even thought about just yet?
I think it's something that I think the UKLC in general will struggle a little bit, or have to put in a much more effort this split than they did last split. I think well, for ourselves anyway, we had the benefit of having Resolve in our league. So, you know, while we could see a team like Resolve, you know, M&M, I could be wrong, M&M could absolutely smurf it for us, but not drop a single game, be really strong, improve everywhere. That'll be a benefit for the UKLC, because then other teams will be able to get up to their level and we'll look stronger at an international stage. At the minute, I don't think we look very strong at all. I think that a lot of teams, including ourselves, have to improve a whole bunch and have to really shore up our play, because we don't have, you know, these teams, these other leagues, they do have some really, really crazy teams in them, and they're only going to learn off of each other, right? We've got each other to learn off, so I think everybody, if everybody in UKLC steps up and it is a really close split, we'll have a better chance in Telia than if we see like 2 people dominate the league and then go to Telia, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And I personally don't like to be like the bearer of bad news, but I do that actually, while if we look at the NLC, like Dusty and Godsend aren't looking great, I do think that they still look stronger than what the sides were in the last NLC split, which means that it will be, I think, a little bit harder to qualify. I mean, Dusty always seems to just somehow stay in this league in the NLC, but I think that Godsend actually could be like still a little bit of a better side. I think it's going to be difficult personally, but obviously only time will tell. Like Dusty and if Dusty and Godsend don't win a single other game this entire thing, and maybe my opinion would change. But yeah,
Fair enough. Let's maybe go on to a few predictions then. Now that we've talked about how unpredictable the league could be for the next couple of weeks, yeah, maybe just for the next 2 days of games, which technically isn't over 1 week because of the weird scheduling, but. Yeah, as we go through, we can maybe give some thoughts on some of the teams as well. Starting with M&M against Enclave. Obviously, Enclave, your old team. I suppose this one is maybe one of the ones that is you'd imagine a bit easier to predict, given that M&M started pretty strong. I've gone for M&M, but yeah, is there a world that we see that the Enclave could upset that?
I don't think so. I think M&M are proactive. I think they have some really, really strong points, like I mentioned. I think Enclave are a more reactive team. I think they've got like consistent players across the board, but they're consistently reacting to stuff. They're not doing. The problem is with at the start of the league, I think reactivity is probably the safest way to go. Like you let the teams make their mistakes, you punish them for it, and then all of a sudden you're in a winning position. And the team that are being proactive, they're going to continue to be proactive, but they've got lesser margins to play by. But as a team, as the plays go on, you know, one of the things you can consistently improve is your proactivity. Reacting is a harder thing to actually keep up to scratch. So a team like Enclave, I think they're going to start to struggle a lot more as the split goes on, and I don't think they are as good as M&M right now. So I think M&M have that one in the bag, 100%.
What do you reckon, Tom?
Yeah.
What are you going for?
Yeah, no, I think that right now it's going to be one of those things where I think it's going to be hard to bet not on M&M because right now they are the team in form, and maybe when they look like when they lose a game, maybe then my opinion on them will go. But when a team's on a hot streak, it's always hard to to kind of predict against them. I feel.
Definitely. After that, then is yourselves against Bulldog. Both 3-3, so purely based on the scorelines, could be a close one. And to be fair, no, shaking your head. To be fair, I'm kind of pleased to see Bulldog like not doing too bad. Obviously, they've not had a great time in the UKLC recently. I think a bit lucky maybe to be in there at the moment, but obviously 3-3 at the moment, which is like we say, better than what they've done recently. So pleased for them, but yeah, you not imagining a chance that they could beat you.
There's definitely a chance they can beat us. I'm not going to say we're going to come out and just absolutely destroy them. Like you said, though, Bulldogs. I think Bulldogs are one of the sweetheart orgs of the UKLC. I think nobody has anything bad to say about them. Everybody was happy when they went through. Even some of the teams they beat to get there were like happy that they gone through. So I haven't got anything bad to say about the org. I want to see the org do well. Obviously, not for the next few days, maybe, but yeah, I think they just don't match up to us individually. they have good players, but I don't think that if we're on our game, we're playing well and they're playing well, we're gonna win 100% of the time. But like I said, there's always that room for upsets and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. That's understandable. I'll give it to you guys as well, especially since you're here. Might be a bit awkward if I go the other way. But yeah, what do you reckon, Tom?
I'm gonna go for Bulldogs because I mean I'm sorry, Beeley, but they are UKEL and we are hosted by they're UKL at heart. But no, I think that I kind of just hope that it'll be a really close game. But I am gonna go to Bulldogs just because it's nice when one of the hosts goes against. I guess. But no, you know what, and I think the sentiment is that I don't think obviously Bulldogs I think would expect to be in the position which they're in, but I don't think a lot of people expected them to be 3-3 at this point, and I think that is really good, and I don't think it's 3-3 just because of like lucky games or anything. I think they've earned kind of a good scoreline to be in this kind of contention still, and so I would like that to continue personally because I think like a lot of people, there's hardly anything bad which has ever been said about Bulldogs since I've ever started like even seeing the UK scene. So it is nice to see kind of like one of the old guard in the UK scene really kind of continue and develop and actually push on and look to be improving as well.
Definitely. After that then is Envision against Resolve Academy, and I suppose with Envision it's a bit of a funny one because they were a team that had been, I think, like pretty consistently put up like decent rosters. Obviously they had like the Prosfair one, which was like mainly pretty much built by Prosfair. But even before that had some decent success, and after it as well. But then like maybe the last couple of splits, it's maybe been slipping up a little bit. Obviously there's not been that many games this split so far. Like technically they're in relegations right now, but in 2 wins they could be second place. So it's maybe not all doom and gloom. Yeah, what are your thoughts on Envision at least and how they've started?
I think Envision they had a really strong split. I think it's 2 splits ago. They had a really strong split. They had some great players. Sorry, they had who was their jungler? He's gone Alex Kylan or something like that.
I think it was like Alex with was it like 3 X's, I think is.
He's an insane. He's like smurfing all over wherever he's going. I think he smurfed really hard at EU Masters as well. So he was a big factor in their success. And I think they didn't, the org. I mean, if an org has a mental, if an org has a mental, like players have mental, then they definitely got rocked last split. So I do want to see them bounce back. They are struggling at the minute. They played well against us. They were in a pretty good position coming into the mid game against us last week because we did just play. So a few mistakes that they made were punished pretty hard by ourselves. But that's London. We're just too good, I guess. But I think it will be closer than people think, especially with Resolve dropping games recently. If Resolve can, I mean, no flame to Luthendi, but with how they've been playing, if Resolve can lose to them, they can definitely lose to Envision. But I would expect Resolve I would hope Resolve to bounce back and come back stronger. I think they've got some really talented players, so I would give it to Resolve.
I'm gonna go for Envision because I think it all depends on how Resolve's mental is gonna be in this game because they lost the M&M Gaming and they lost the bottom as well. That they've lost 2 games in a row now. They were undefeated, and you by the stats you lost to the best team and the worst team. So that's quite difficult to kind of see where they are from that standpoint. Now this does mean that maybe at Envision they could be like, unfortunately, the people who get the backlash of that, and it could motivate them and get to be a better team. Because I do think that Resolve Academy is like a really good team. But on the other point, I don't think this Envision squad is as bad as what like the other scoreline is. And I think maybe, like you said, like 2-4 isn't actually like the worst scoreline. It's just because it's been close everywhere else as well. Like like I said, if they're gonna win the third, the tie, they could tie up and with everybody and stuff. So I actually think that this Envision side is better than some of the other teams actually above them. It's just I don't think it's clicked for them as yet as much with the others. And I do think, like Beeley was kind of saying previously, when it's sometimes you get just so many players together, it is just kind of luck if these players can just mesh straight away and get results and kind of build off that. So I expect Envision to be a lot better, and I think that why not? Let's predict Envision to win because like I said, I think Envision are better, and I don't really know where Resolve's head at right now, considering they lost two quite important games, really.
I was going to go Resolve actually, and then I think you've kind of convinced me actually with that, Tom. Especially like you say with Resolve, the heads might have dropped a bit. It's as good a chance as ever for Envision to take the win. So I'm going to go Envision as well. The game after that then is Lucent against Viperio.
I would also say though, Lee, that these points and predictions don't count to my NLC predictions. So our point system is only NLC purely. So maybe I'm just not as good as predicting UKLC.
Well, you can take more risks, I suppose. But Megalodon has had a good week last week as our guest predictor, Tom. He's only 1 point behind you now.
He proper rocked, mate. He did.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Next one is Lucent against Viperio. Obviously, we said Lucent just got their first win, but generally have started pretty poorly. Viperio, I was actually pretty impressed with, given that they got given the spot quite late on, and you imagine for the most part probably had built the roster for the UKEL. So for them to be 3-3, I think it's pretty impressive. I'd probably give it to them over Lucent as a result of that. What are our thoughts on that one?
I'm also going to go for Viperio as well. I think that, again, maybe it is just a bit of UKEL, bias. Well, I don't know. I don't think it's anything to do with that, actually. I just think that, actually, Viperio have looked a bit shaky, I think, in recently, but I don't think it's too bad. And maybe it is hypocritical that I'm like, oh, you've talked about Resolve Academy losing 2 games in a row, and it might have mental boom for them, but then Viperio, who's also lost 2 games in a row, you're saying they're gonna win against the team which just beat Resolve Academy. But that's how league goes. Sometimes you don't know, and I did say that that I don't really know how it's gonna go, but I do think Viperio. I actually have been impressed with them, and like you said, given the circumstances, and but Lucent just won. Maybe this is the kind of the catalyst which pushes them on and does better.
Could well be.
I think it is one of the harder, or it is without a doubt the hardest one to predict because not only are they close in standings, but they are 2 pretty new teams. I think their players are all of a similar sort of skill level as of right now, as well as their play. But I think I'm going to have to give it to Lucent just because they're coming off of a win against Resolve. I mean, if you can't take that mental edge and turn it into more wins, it's not going to be a good split for you. So, hopefully they're able to use that momentum well and start a little run for themselves and get themselves back up in contention for playoffs.
Makes sense. Going on to the next day then, which is technically the week, the next week of games. But we'll do this next day as well. And that starts with you guys actually up against Resolve. I'm going to give it Resolve for this one. Firstly, because like you said, Tom, it's maybe a bit more fun if someone goes against the guest. But as well, if we say Resolve, I've got Envision to beat them now. And then that would have been, at that point, 3 losses in a row. They've got to sort of butt their ideas at that point and come out swinging against you guys. So I'll give it Resolve against London. But then, Beeley, maybe tell us why you think you'll win then.
If you do think they're shaky. Yeah, I do think we'll win. I think we played them the first game of the split, on the first day, first game of the split, and I think they had a really strong grip on the meta before us. So they were playing, they played Lee Sin mid and these picks that we weren't really even practicing too much then. I think since then we've adapted quite quickly and we're expecting it to an extent. I don't think they've shown anything new since then as well. I think they came out strong and then they stayed strong and then teams caught up and now you're seeing them drop games against some of the lower teams. If they lose to Envision, 100% they're going to lose to us. They don't seem like a team. They're quite new players. They are talented. They've got good players, but it takes a lot to come back mentally. And I think if you're dropping games to the bottom team of the league that hasn't beat anyone yet, it's like a precursor for some issues that might be underlying there. With that being said, they could turn it around. They could beat Envision. They could show us something new. I hope they do show us something new, but I do think that we're going to beat them. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go London as well. I think, yeah, very much because I've put them lose to Envision. I think it will be very, it's going to be, it could be. I'm predicting quite a bad time for Resolve Academy right now, and I just think that it is kind of just a situation of how they react to that loss, and then also subsequent, because if they, like you said, they perform really well against Envision, maybe this was their moment when they took that loss to be like, right, we do need to change something up. We do need to adapt. We do need to do something different, kind of things. And so that could actually, in the turn, benefit them, beat Envision, and potentially beat you guys as well. But I am going to say London. I think that it's looking, it's going to look very tasty, and that's why I'm predicting. I wanted a tasty league table. That's what I'm going for.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. After that, then we've got M&M against Bulldog. I suppose that one maybe could be a bit of a close one. They're not too far apart in terms of wins, but then I don't know. I guess M&M is like the obvious pick for that one, seeing as that they are on top at the moment. Is there anyone that would go against M&M?
No,
didn't think so. We can.
I'm actually going to go against them. Yeah, I think that, like I said, their strength right now is that they have like such an outstanding player. They could pick, they don't necessarily have to play meta because they can play through Yopper. They obviously have strengths elsewhere, but it's going to be on them to adapt and actually show that. Whereas Bulldogs, they're an all-rounder. I can't see any definitive style for them. They're going to have 4 weeks of M&M games to go through. I think they're going to be well prepared for what M&M throw at them, and I think that preparation that they can do is really valuable. Whereas Bulldogs are gonna, M&M are gonna have to look at Bulldogs and say, okay, Bulldogs do this well. They do this badly, but they haven't got any defining style, so it makes it harder to do specific prep. So I think Bulldogs might be able to edge out the win there.
I think it's very interesting because I think that Bulldogs, given kind of how they've kind of come into to this competition, this split, I think they're very much considered like this wild card team. I think it seems now, where people kind of don't know where exactly they're going to go because of the performances that they've had, and so I could easily see them, go doing really well, or alternatively going back down lower into the table. So I think it's very interesting. It's very good to have a side like that, which you kind of didn't expect to kind of be in this position and just wondering where they're going to go.
Mm-hmm. Next up after that, then we've got Lucent against Enclave, and Lucent, not Lucendi, which I think I said last time, which I've been corrected in the chat. So yeah, Lucent against Enclave. It's another one actually similar to that last game where there is a couple of wins different between them at the moment. So it is one that has a bit of a bigger gap than the rest. That's obviously in Enclave's favour. Lucent, though, maybe could be on a high after beating Resolve. Is there a chance that they could maybe carry that over?
I think, like I said earlier, I get the vibe from Enclave that they're happy to like sit there, farm, see what happens, and then react to it. And I think Lucent are a team that aren't necessarily happy doing that, so they are a team that are proactive. It's easier to improve if you're proactive. I think Lucent, again, riding the high as well. I think it's going to be. I think it'll be a stomp either way. I think it's either going to go really good for Lucent or really bad for them. But glass half full, I'm going to go with Lucent.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a game based on mistakes. I think it's just going to be a team which makes the most mistakes, whether it be Lucent doing this aggressive style and that costs them. Because I think, like you said, that both teams do kind of have this different way that they're playing the game right now. So, if Enclave make a mistake in terms of being too passive, Lucent make a mistake in terms of being, a bit too proactive, I think it could cost either of them. I am gonna edge it towards Enclave, because and this is personally me, I've always kind of, while I don't think it works in terms of playoffs, because I think you do need to be proactive in playoffs to kind of learn a lot more and stuff like that, I do think when it comes to like league play in terms of like tournament and facing each other, I think that sometimes the the slow and steady way does work quite a lot, especially when there isn't like a massive skill gap between the two teams, which I don't think there is. So that's why I'm going for Enclave right now, because I think that there's less chance of Enclave making more mistakes. And that's not saying that both teams are bad. I think it is just the case of how these styles of play are going to react. But I love seeing games where you do have a team which likes to play a little bit slower, a little bit more calm, and then you have like this proactive team, because it really does show two styles, because we don't get that all the time in League of Legends. And so it's actually a game that I'm really looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, definitely. I'd give it Enclave as well. But yeah, it makes sense, like what you're saying, Tom, as well. And I suppose it could be, maybe it could depend on draft and things like that as well. If like you're saying, Beeley, that Enclave would prefer to sort of farm it out, if they end up giving Lucent just like a mad like early game draft, and Lucent maybe being more proactive could come out and just stomp them quite easily. So yeah, it'd be definitely an interesting one. The last game then after that is Envision against Viperio. Like we said, Envision maybe not started too strongly, but obviously they're still only a 1 win behind Viperio at that point. I'll maybe do a bit of the UKEL bias as well and go for Viperio on this one. But I think maybe a tough one though.
I believe in Envision. I'm going Envision. Like 2-0, come on, or not 2-0, it'll technically be like, yeah, 'cause it's weird. Yeah, it's fine. I was like 2-0 from this prediction. Yeah.
What do you reckon?
Yeah,
Billy?
I'm going to go with Envision as well. Yeah, I think that they're good. The only thing they need to fix is, or from what I can see, is shoring up the end of their games and getting on the same page. But I think that's something that they could easily turn around and look really good at in a week's time. So I'm going to go with Envision.
Fair enough.
And then just quickly though, I know obviously we're not going to talk about like, the other two games in week 4, but I do just want to say, like, how is it kind of knowing that you're going to be facing Resolve Academy and then the next day you're going to be facing M&M? Do you prefer that, or is it kind of like you would have rather have had like a harder game and then an easier game, or is it like it doesn't really matter?
I think we'll see. If we win tomorrow, we're going to have quite a bit of momentum behind us, because scrims, scrims are a joke, right? You don't say doing well in scrims, blah, 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 but we are doing well in scrims. If we're able to translate that and look strong on the Rift, then it's going to look really good for us. And then, momentum is huge in a league like this. If we're able to use that, beat out Resolve, which I think is very doable, then it's going to be, depending on how M&M's games go as well, they're going to have a lot of momentum too, but it's going to be a hard-fought game, and I think that it's exciting. I'd prefer to have these two games right now and then be like, okay, well, these are the two teams that are actually playing really well in the league. Get what we can from them, hopefully beat them both, and then we have the rest of the split to sort of focus on just beating everybody else and doing the best we can. And it's not like that looming thought of, we've got M&M and they've got like a 10-game win streak now. We get them out of the way. Especially playing two teams that are so good in the league right now is going to be a huge learning curve for us too. Like we're going to have so much to learn from, win or lose against these teams. So we're going to look strong after next week for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, it makes sense. Kind of one topic I wanted to talk about is obviously a bit pretty much unrelated to the UKLC, but something before we start to wrap up was obviously being hosted by the UKEL. Obviously, there was a big bit of news around there this week.
Was there?
There was, yeah, Tom. With obviously NerdRage losing their spot with the whole drama of the the player that was given a Smurf account or like sent a Smurf account, stuff like that. And obviously you're someone that had a bit of a drama last year as well. I think that not with NerdRage, obviously that was with Demise, with some contractual stuff at that point. So it's not still, even though we're like yourself, you've been in the UK scene for probably the best part of like 5 years now. It's not still, impossible that stuff sometimes dodgy but yeah, like drama still go on. Do you see that it's getting less at this point though? Because I suppose it's good that at least like with NerdRage, you see that it's someone that when that was coming out, that a lot of people kind of come out and said that they'd heard stuff as well. So in their sense, it may be a good thing that they're gone at least for the next year. The one with Demise was one that was a bit more subject. There were people kind of looking at it from both sides. I think that one, if anything, was more of just a learning curve of just making sure that at least like contracts and things are much clearer and stuff like that. I suppose it's like still a bit of a process. Like that one, was a waking call for all the orgs to make sure that the contracts are a bit better. And do you see that it's improving at least, even though there are still things that happen now and again?
I think the problem, or the problem up until now, in my opinion, is that there's a lot on the players' back to make sure that they don't get scammed, rather than on the orgs to not scam somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really unhealthy environment when the orgs have so much power, and the players, you're always looking for new up and coming talent. So the players are always going to be, there's always going to be a good portion of players that are young, inexperienced, and exploitable. So I think we need to shift the rhetoric onto the orgs and say, actually, you're the responsible one here. You need to make sure that you're looking after the people that you sign, putting that time and effort into to making sure everything's right. In terms of NerdRage, they're an org that have been involved multiple times in the past, so I don't feel sorry for them. I don't think the ruling was too harsh. They've done it before. They've had warnings. They've put out tweets and statements saying that they're going to improve, and then they go and do something that is like blatantly unsportsmanlike, hiding your player, hiding. You're affecting the entire game there, especially when you get somebody that is, he's a great player, but he's also a great player on Akali. Like he's got this one champion that he's known for, and you're depriving that team of them. I think it's just not good, and hopefully a better org will take their place. In terms of the Demise stuff, I think, yeah, I mean, the way they handled it, I mean, you say like it was down to like a matter of opinion and stuff like that. Obviously, my opinion is slightly different. I see the people that came out and defended them, people still getting paid by them. So how much, you know what I mean? Like if you're under that org still, you're not going to say, or it's harder for you to say. I think without going into that too much, because it's like, I'm not going to get a resolution out of that at this point. The issue for me is that the main one is, so when that first happened, obviously I approached them. I said, this is the case. This is what I was explicitly said. This is the screenshots I have from your manager telling me this is what's going to happen. And when they didn't do it, I went to UKLC. Eventually, I was like, okay, well, I want to let people know about this, because if I'm not going to get anything from it, I want it to at least be out there. And I messaged maybe 5 or 6 different people that were veterans in the scene or higher level management, or they were involved heavily and they had a lot of experience, and all of them gave me the same sort of answer, where it was like, if you do speak out about this, you're risking your career. And I think that is the problem, right? So what we've seen with NerdRage is that one person comes forward, it's much easier for everybody else to come forward, and then you get positive change. But while all these little things that are happening behind the scenes, and everybody wants to progress, obviously, if they do speak out, then they paint themselves as a sort of like this rogue or this ungrateful person, or I don't know how fresh the statements that Demise put out about me are, but they called me selfish, and they said that I was trying to exploit their homegrown org and the money's coming out of their pockets, and it's just all these statements really paint a person to be bad, when at the end of the day, I was told I was going to be paid. I haven't been paid for the last 6 games I played with them. It's not me exploiting your org, you know what I mean? Like, you're a big org. You've got teams in different areas. You got different games. You got multi-level management. I'm just a guy that just wants a little bit of money for putting in all the hours I put in. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, until people start to feel comfortable speaking out about their experiences, then we're not going to see too many changes. I don't think orgs are still going to get away with a lot. But that's just how the world works, unfortunately.
I think as well, like the more kind of these examples go, whether there's like massive repercussions or even not, I think it's like the fact that these discussions are being more open, because while everybody on the inside knows about how these is happening, if it's kept on the inside, nothing's going to change. Where if it's actually brought out to the public attention, like, you would hope that then some of these organizations who are thinking about maybe doing something like this because they thought they could get away with it are actually like, oh no, actually we don't want this bad press. And to be fair, like, if I have to kind of with regards to like the NerdRage stuff, because obviously we weren't allowed to talk about it while it was ongoing in like, because they were doing investigation, which I completely understand why we couldn't. But I think that the way that they handled it and the way that the tournament handled it is actually really good, and hopefully kind of you see more practices like this start to occur as well, because they firstly were on a probation period for a thing which they did, which I actually agree with. I think it's while it was still like a serious matter, I still think going on a probation period is a way of saying that you're going to try and help them and advise them, which I think is smart, because sometimes whether it could just be a case of miscommunication, not all the time it is, and most of the time it isn't. But if it can kind of help a team or organization learn and kind of realize that this isn't right, that could good. Obviously with NerdRage that didn't work, and what happened then was unsportsmanlike, and kind of the way that even they reacted to it afterwards was also unsportsmanlike, and you don't want that in the league. And so I could see why then the league had the option of doing that. What I'm very glad with is it wasn't like they are removed from the league and the players are removed from that league. I like the fact that the players still get the opportunity, like everybody still gets the chance. They're just not associated by that org, and they now have the chance to find another organization. So I do think it was really well done, and hopefully now that we've kind of seen a precedent of this, and now kind of organizations hopefully realize if we do stuff like this, there are causes and consequences that you will hopefully see things not like this, and this is good for what is a third tier in one of the NLC system and second tier in the UK system. The fact that like a second tier is implementing these things is good, because if you can implement it at the bottom, then you can implement it at the top as well, and hopefully that continues.
Yeah, I just want to say actually the way it was handled was, I think it was handled the best way it could be. Like you said, orgs, it doesn't matter how bad well, it does matter how bad, but they will mess up. They are run by humans. This is a relatively new area, especially to the orgs coming in. Like this is the grassroots level, so you're going to see new orgs come about, and they're going to see and learn. They do deserve the opportunity to learn from their mistakes, which is what the UKEL, what Alex and Mark gave to NerdRage. They had that opportunity, and they understood as well. I think that's the key thing. They understood that they were on probation. They've done stuff in the past. They understood they had to be better, and they just weren't better. They continued to do stuff they shouldn't have done. And at the end of the day, you need to, at a certain point, you need to put your foot down and say, well, no, then you've got. And they're not even like permanently banned, right? They're banned until like 2023 or 2022. So they have all the opportunity to go back and work on it and get things. So I think it is a really healthy way to deal with situations like that. But absolutely, one mistake from an org, or even a few mistakes that are unrelated, no reason to witch hunt them out of the league. 100%.
And I think what was good is that like in that probation during the statement which was given, what I like is it was like, and if there was a repeatable offense, it was very transparent that if there was offences like this which they would deem to be bad essentially, that then punishment would also be given. And there was even that there was that knowledge that they would, if they did do something bad, there would be causes and consequences because of that. So.
Yeah, I think just well handled all around that one, to be fair.
And we weren't. And by the way, just say yes, we're on the UKEL, but obviously it's only because we happily get hosted by them. We did not get told to say. I'm suspecting that we did not get told to say that.
Yeah.
That is purely like my opinion on the situation itself in terms of the handling. I could tell you this: there are a lot of other esports leagues in other titles which don't do things as good as that. So.
Absolutely. I mean, there's like so I think Froome actually tweeted after like the NerdRage thing doesn't even break top 10 of scams, and I think everybody needs to try and adapt to this mentality where if the classic is be the change you want to be in the world. Like, no flame to Froome. I know a lot of people have that opinion, or a lot of people know what's going on and in the scene, and they're not saying anything. And I think it is difficult to speak out because you are putting yourself at risk. But if you know all these things that are happening that are scammy, the only way to get rid of them is to speak out on them. So if you're burdened with that knowledge, try and use it, build up that courage, that confidence, especially if you're not involved in the team right now. It's much easier to share your opinion. So
I think it is, like I said, I think it is very difficult though, isn't it? It's like, because while it's while it's a scene that isn't perfect for a lot of people, it's still a scene that they love, and so it's hard for like I feel like sometimes you do get this thought of like, if I do come out with this, am I basically limiting myself from joining the scene again, which I have this kind of connection to, essentially, you know, and it is a very difficult. And the thing is, though, is that it shouldn't have to be in terms of like this shouldn't have to be a thing, and unfortunately, it is. You know, it's like it shouldn't. You should actually be able to say these things and not have repercussions, or alternatively, these things shouldn't be happening. You know.
Exactly. Nobody's free from criticism, right?
Mhm.
Like not even orgs. And I think up until recently, there was this sort of thing where orgs got away with whatever they want. People knew about a lot of stuff that's going on, and they still join the same orgs, or they still, you know, participate or trial for them, stuff like that. And I think when we start speaking out, like you said, you know, if you speak out against a team and you come and you're like sure that what they're doing is wrong, then that team remains in the league because of whatever reason, like for example, feeling almost, you are cutting ties. If you're one of the people that speak out against X org and that X org stays in the league, that's one less spot that you potentially can trial for because you know you're not going to be involved with them. And you know, seeing positive change from the UKEL in regards to NerdRage is only going to be a huge encouraging factor because now people will be actually, you know, there are consequences for them, and a new org is going to take that spot, right? So you're not losing out on any opportunities in that league. So it's really great.
Yeah, definitely. I think yeah, on that kind of positive end to that, then we can maybe start to wrap up the episode. This is the point where I'd usually have a nice graphic for the upcoming UKEL games. I don't have one today, but I can tell you what the games are anyway, which are from this next Thursday at 6 p.m. Monster Rugby against August, obviously formerly NerdRage, and then followed up by London's Academy. So Beeley, if anyone to look out for on there.
I think the academy team right now are gelling. I heard that their AD carry's popping off. I know that their mid laner is super motivated. We've worked together a couple of times. I think I've got a session with them later as well. So keep your eyes on both of them players, but the
Very
team in
nice.
general is good.
Yeah, and they're against Lucendi in that match. Then X7 against London United, and then followed up by Demise against Knox. And again, that's from 6 p.m. on Thursday. And yeah, with that, we're pretty much all done. Obviously, if you are watching on Twitch, and we've got a few knocking around in the chat, do feel free to follow on there to see those games on Thursday. Obviously, you can watch us as well. We're usually live every Sunday. Otherwise, if you're watching later back on YouTube or listening on a variety of podcast hosting platforms, and you can of course follow on any of those, and you can follow us all directly on Twitter as well. And yeah, that's pretty much that. Thanks for coming, Beeley, and thanks for listening, everyone.
No problem.